She wasn't just cold, she was made of ice and law books. My wife, a powerful attorney, used courtroom tactics to cheat on me with her legal opponents, then smiled at me across the dinner table like nothing happened. But here's the part she didn't see coming. I studied her playbook and I turned it against her. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a legal war behind closed doors. Thank you to all my incredible subscribers who've been supporting these dramatic, real-life inspired stories. If you're new here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode. We drop daily stories that will keep your heart racing and your mind guessing. Some women wear perfume to seduce. My wife wore control. I'm David Langston, 42, born and raised in Virginia, now living just outside Washington, D.C. I used to think I had the perfect life. A stable career in consulting, a beautiful home, and a brilliant wife who could walk into any courtroom and make seasoned men tremble with a glance. Her name is Rebecca Langston. And she wasn't just a lawyer, she was the kind of woman who bent the law to her liking. We met 13 years ago at a networking gala. She was in her final year of law school, sleek black dress, sharper tongue, and a presence that could stop traffic. I was just stepping into a new role as a senior financial advisor. She liked that I was quiet, observant, predictable, maybe. I liked that she wasn't. She was all fire and control. The kind of woman who'd rather win an argument than win affection. And I didn't mind. Not at first. The first few years were filled with ambition. She joined a top firm in D.C., one that handled high-profile corporate disputes. We'd come home late, both exhausted, her from legal wars, me from economic puzzles, and somehow fall into each other like we were still 20. She never cooked. Never cleaned. But she conquered. And I admired her for it. But with every courtroom victory she brought home, something else left. A piece of warmth. A touch of softness. She began viewing life like a series of negotiations. Including me. She once said, "Emotion is weakness in litigation, David. And in marriage." I laughed then. I didn't know she meant it. It started small, like most betrayals do. She began spending longer hours with special clients. I'd hear her talking to male colleagues over wine after midnight, her laugh a little too loose, a little too warm for someone supposedly wrapping up case notes. At first, I said nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. She was a high-stakes litigator, surely she'd make enemies and allies alike. But I remember one evening when I came home early. Her phone was on speaker in the kitchen. She didn't hear me walk in. A man's voice said, "You're ruthless in court, but soft in bed. Dangerous combination." She chuckled. Softly. "Keep talking like that and I'll make you lose next week's hearing on purpose." I stood frozen. She saw me and didn't flinch. Just ended the call and said, "Just banter. Part of the game. Part of the game." I told myself it was nothing. Lawyers flirt with words, right? That's their weapon. Their edge. But her touch changed after that. Cold. Distant. Calculated. She used to brush my collar before work. Now she barely looked up from her laptop. When we made love, which became rare, she wasn't there. Not really. Her body was, but her soul had checked out long ago. I should have spoken up. I should have demanded honesty. But how do you corner someone who knows every escape clause? How do you interrogate a woman trained to never confess? I started paying attention. Not like a jealous husband. More like a detective. I noted names. Times. Voices. Tone. And I saw patterns. She had a habit of seducing her opponents after winning major cases. Never before. Always after. Like a twisted form of dominance. She didn't want love. She wanted conquest. One of them was a senior partner from a rival firm. I found a receipt for an expensive bottle of wine from a bar 2 blocks from the courthouse. Same day as her landmark case win. She told me she went to dinner alone. Another was a younger associate. Cocky, new in town, and too foolish to understand that he was just another notch in her legal warpath. I began to feel something I never felt before in my marriage. Fear. Not fear of violence, but fear of being completely outmatched. She didn't cheat for love. She cheated for thrill. For control. And I was just the husband, steady, loyal, predictable, the emotional safety net she'd return to after every courtroom affair. Until I wasn't. That night, I watched her come home late, hair still perfect, eyes glowing like she'd won a battle. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Long deposition." I just nodded. But I had already started preparing for my own case. Not in court. At home. Because if she could use the law to destroy vows, I could use it to protect what little dignity I had left. And maybe, just maybe, take back the power she thought I never had. She knew the law like scripture. But even scripture can be used to justify sin. By the time I fully accepted Rebecca was cheating, I had already stopped looking for proof and started looking for leverage. I wasn't a lawyer, but I wasn't stupid either. I spent 15 years helping Fortune 500 companies hide assets and untangle corporate fraud. So I started treating my own marriage like an investigation, quiet, precise, and emotionally detached. I had learned that when your opponent is sharper than you, you don't fight harder, you fight smarter. It started with a burner phone. She thought I wouldn't notice the second phone in her briefcase. But I did, and not because I snooped. I found it by accident while grabbing her laptop charger during one of our power outages. She rushed over like I had just touched a bomb. "That's firm issued," she said calmly. "We're testing secure lines for sensitive clients." She lied effortlessly, like her tongue had forgotten what honesty ever felt like. That night, after she slept rather peacefully for someone playing Russian roulette with her marriage, I cracked the lock pattern using an old trick, smudges on the screen. Just a triangle. Easy. What I found wasn't just evidence. It was a gallery of betrayals. Photos, messages, voicemails. Nothing romantic. Just clinical scheduling. Tomorrow after depositions, same suite. Wear the red blouse. You know what it does to me after cross. Delete these. My wife is suspicious. And the worst part? Some messages were from her legal opponents. She wasn't just cheating. She was sleeping with the very men she was supposed to be destroying in court after the trial. It was like a twisted celebration ritual. Win a case, reward yourself with your rival. One name stood out. Evan Carlisle. A managing partner at Whitmore and Lane, one of the most ruthless litigation firms in D.C. She beat him in a multi-million-dollar arbitration months ago. I remembered her coming home that night, champagne in hand, heels clicking like victory drums. I thought it was just adrenaline. No. It was afterglow. Rebecca didn't cry when she cheated. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't feel guilt because she believed the game justified the play. She had once told me, in law, you don't ask permission. You assert your position until someone objects. That's how she treated our marriage. Her default stance was dominance unless I objected. But I never had. Until now. I couldn't confront her without risking a clever manipulation. She'd twist it. Gaslight me. Cry foul. Say I misunderstood. So instead, I began documenting everything. I took photos of the messages. Saved her travel receipts. Even recorded a late-night call when she thought I was asleep in the next room. She whispered, "You're such a distraction, Evan. David wouldn't last a minute against you in court." She laughed after saying that. It was the first time I truly hated her. I hired a private investigator, someone discreet. A former military guy who now freelanced for corporate divorces and cheating scandals. His name was Cole. No last name given. He was efficient and quiet. Smart woman, he told me after the second week. Too smart, but not careful. Emotional arrogance is always the crack. He followed her for 6 weeks. Documented hotel visits. Captured blurry but damning surveillance photos of her and Evan entering private elevators. Different hotels. Always after depositions. Like clockwork. Cole even found out that Evan was in the middle of his own marital collapse. His wife had filed for divorce citing infidelity. And now Rebecca, my wife, was involved with a man actively hiding millions in assets from his own legal team. That's when it clicked. Rebecca wasn't just playing with fire, she was the fire. She wasn't sleeping with Evan for love. She was doing it for intel. Access. Power. She used sex like a weapon. Just like the law. One evening, she came home wearing a smug smile. "I might be made junior partner," she said, pouring herself wine. "Congratulations," I replied. She watched me a moment. "That's all?" I nodded. "Just thinking about how far you've come." She smiled again, but it was cautious. Like a chess player suddenly unsure about her opponent's next move. That's when I knew she sensed something. I was no longer the naive, compliant husband. I was preparing for court. A different kind of court. I had one ace she didn't expect. See, Rebecca had drafted our prenuptial agreement herself. Arrogantly. She believed she'd always have the upper hand. But she made a mistake. A clause that gave me access to 50% of any assets gained through dishonest marital conduct if proven in arbitration. She had laughed when she included it. Only fair. I'll never cheat. But if you do, I get everything. She never imagined the clause would be used against her. Now I had hard evidence. A bulletproof case. Not just to protect myself, but to ruin her in the very world she used to climb over people like me. She used the law like a sword. I learned to turn it into a mirror. If you've ever seen a lawyer squirm, it's not in a courtroom, it's at home when she realizes the husband she underestimated is now sitting on a loaded arsenal of her own tactics. By this point, I didn't just have evidence. I had strategy. I wasn't going to scream, beg, or threaten. I was going to prepare, just like she had done all those years in the courtroom, cornering her opponents with calm cruelty and airtight logic. This was no longer a marriage. It was litigation. I kept things normal. That was the key. Make her feel safe. Make her feel clever. She loved that, believing she was always one step ahead. Going to Evan's firm again? I'd say casually. She'd smirk. Yes. Arbitration prep. And I'd nod, knowing exactly what room she'd be in by 8:15 p.m. She wasn't hiding it. Not really. It was like she enjoyed the risk. Like she believed I was too soft to fight back. She'd misread me. Like most powerful people, she mistook silence for weakness. With all the evidence in hand, I met with a family attorney, Carla Mendez. She was sharp, discreet, and seasoned in high-conflict divorces involving lawyers. When she saw the evidence, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You've got her." Ironclad. We filed quietly for separation, triggering a clause in the prenup that froze shared assets and allowed a temporary audit. This meant Rebecca couldn't transfer, hide, or liquidate anything without court approval. I didn't serve her at home. I waited. I waited until she was in court herself, representing a tech firm in a trade secrets trial. Her assistant handed her the envelope during a 10-minute recess. She opened it thinking it was a file update. Instead, it was a summons. Divorce proceedings initiated. Misconduct clause invoked. Arbitration pending. That night, she came home in silence. Didn't hang her coat. Didn't pour wine. Just stared at me from the living room like I was a stranger in her house. "You blindsided me," she finally said. "No," I replied. "You blinded yourself." She looked around the room like someone searching for something. Maybe dignity, maybe the upper hand. "You're twisting this," she hissed. "You wrote the rules, Rebecca. I'm just playing your game." She sat down slowly, her confidence peeling away like old wallpaper. "I was going to end it," she whispered. "With Evan. I was going to. Before or after you made partner?" I cut in. Silence. That's when I saw it. Not guilt, but calculation. She was recalculating her next move. Reassessing her odds. Even in that moment, she wasn't trying to win me back, she was trying to win the case. A few days later, her lawyer reached out. Offered a quiet settlement. No press. Equal division. Gag order. No arbitration hearing. I declined. I wanted arbitration. I wanted the record. Because the clause in our prenup didn't just offer financial recompense, it allowed for an official finding of infidelity if proven, which could cost her everything at her firm. Reputation. Partnership offer. Future litigation credibility. Rebecca had spent her life building a name as the ruthless but ethical firebrand in the courtroom. If it came out that she slept with opposing counsel for access or influence, her career would implode before she could file an appeal. My investigator, Cole, found something else, something she never thought I'd trace. Evan had transferred money to her. Not large sums. Just enough to be consulting payments. But she never reported them. Which meant undisclosed financial ties to opposing counsel during trial. That wasn't just adultery. That was legal misconduct. Now I had her cornered. But I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted closure and control. I met her one final time. At the same wine bar we went to on our anniversary 3 years ago. She walked in wearing all black. Professional. Cold. "You're not going through with the arbitration," she said flatly. I just looked at her. "Why?" I asked. She blinked. I leaned forward. "Why did you throw us away?" And that's when it slipped. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She just whispered. I needed to feel like I could still win. That's when I stood up and said, "You just lost." She wielded the law like a weapon. But this time I was holding the blade. Courtrooms always held a kind of reverence for Rebecca. It was her stage. Her power zone. The place she could outmaneuver, outlast anyone. Except this time she wasn't prepared to be the one on trial. It wasn't public court, but it was damn close. 3 judges. 2 attorneys. Evidence submitted. Witnesses permitted. Everything she'd once used to destroy others now lined up against her. She arrived in a muted gray suit, no makeup, no smile, and for the first time, no power in her stride. She looked like someone walking into a room where the light had already been stripped from the walls. Her lawyer did the talking. but her silence spoke volumes. And then, my attorney opened with calm precision. Exhibit A, emails and texts between Rebecca and Evan, including detailed discussions of their affair, plans to meet, and romantic remarks. Exhibit B, a digital audit trail of multiple unreported consulting payments from Evan's firm to her private bank account. Exhibit C, surveillance footage of her entering Evan's private condo after business hours repeatedly over several months. Rebecca sat still, but her jaw locked every time the panel turned a page. Then Carla, my lawyer, delivered the finishing blow. A sworn affidavit from Evan's assistant stating she had been instructed by Evan to cover for him when he and Rebecca needed privacy during depositions and trial prep. That wasn't just unethical. That was grounds for professional misconduct. Then, her lawyer claimed, the relationship was consensual and private. It had no influence on case strategy. The financial transfers were personal gifts, not professional conflicts. But the panel wasn't buying it. Even if you removed the romance, she'd accepted funds from opposing counsel during an active trial. That's conflict of interest 101. One of the judges leaned forward and said, Ms. Weston, do you have any comment for the panel? Rebecca cleared her throat. Her voice cracked, but her tone was flat. I made a personal mistake. I didn't violate the law. The judge replied. But you violated your oath. And that was it. Now, the ruling wasn't criminal, but it was damning. She was suspended from practicing law pending further review. The panel's written opinion was leaked internally across the legal community. The ethics board opened an investigation. She was removed from her firm partnership track quietly but effectively. Clients pulled out. Colleagues distanced themselves. Her reputation, once bulletproof, now leaked from every corner. She called me 2 days later. Are you happy now? She asked, voice hollow. No, I said. But I'm finally free. She didn't respond. And I didn't call back. Funny thing is, when she moved out, she left most of her things. The books she once obsessed over. Her robes. Her awards. But she took one item with her, the framed print of Lady Justice that had hung over our fireplace. Blindfolded. Balanced. Cold. Just like her. People ask me sometimes, why didn't I just walk away quietly? Because silence is how abusers survive. Because too many people like Rebecca hide behind titles, careers, and power. And because sometimes justice doesn't come from a gavel. It comes from refusing to be the victim one more time. Rebecca tries to reclaim control. But for me, I finally learned what healing really looks like after betrayal and how closure isn't a courtroom win, it's peace. Before the final story. Fire new episodes drop daily. Like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life inspired infidelity stories. If you're loving this journey of betrayal, revenge, and cold justice, don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next stories. I thought revenge would set me free, but it was peace that finally did. It had been 3 months since the arbitration hearing. Rebecca was suspended from practicing law. Her name had vanished from her firm's website. The whispers in the legal world were louder than ever. But she still hadn't reached out again until one morning I found an envelope on my porch. No postage. Just my name. Inside? A typed letter. You were always smarter than I gave you credit for. You beat me at my own game. I hope you feel proud. I feel nothing. Rebecca. That was it. No apology. No regret. No love lost. Just an admission of defeat without a single crack of vulnerability. It should have satisfied me. But instead I felt empty. I had spent so long building my strategy to expose her like a chess game played with shards of glass. Every move calculated. Every truth sharpened into a weapon. But once the dust settled, I realized something. Even if I won, I was still left with ashes. The home we shared? Cold and hollow. The routines we built? Gone. The woman I once loved? Never existed. Revenge is a dish best served cold. But healing is warm. And I hadn't felt that in years. One Sunday morning, I finally went back to the cobby. Maddie tried to destroy me one last time. But I'm still standing. And there's only one thing left to do. Tell the world the truth. I kept waiting for her to say sorry. She never did. So I learned to stop needing it. When Maddie went to prison, the silence in our home grew louder. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and reach over out of habit only to feel the cold sheets beside me. Her things were long gone, boxed up by her lawyer's assistant and dumped at her mother's place. The wedding photo over the mantel was the last to go. I stared at it for days. 2 people smiling like the world couldn't touch them. But it had. And one of them let it in. I finally took it down the night the first snow fell. That winter was long. Her family didn't speak to me after the trial. They believed her lies, at least at first. Then later, her mother called once. I still can't believe she'd do that. To you. To us. I didn't know what to say. Sometimes even those closest to the fire pretend they don't smell the smoke until the whole house is gone. About 4 months into her sentence, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. No apology. Just 10 words written in her familiar, looping script. You'll never forget me. I branded myself into you. I burned the letter. Not out of anger, but because I knew she was right. Some betrayals don't fade. They stay. Like fingerprints on your soul. The department eventually cleared me of all wrongdoing. My badge was reinstated. My pay restored. But something had changed. I no longer looked at the job the same. I used to feel pride putting on that uniform. Now I felt exposed. Like everyone was watching me differently. Not as the officer who served, but as the man whose wife had laughed at him while lying in another man's bed. I put in my papers. 6 months early retirement. That was it. I sold the house. Too many ghosts. Too many memories. I moved 3 towns over. Closer to my sister, who made me Sunday dinners and forced me to talk about things I kept buried. And one night, over her meatloaf and iced tea, she said, "Brian, you deserve peace. But you won't find it if you keep punishing yourself for what she did." That line stuck with me. I realized I hadn't been trying to forgive Maddie. I'd been trying to understand her. And some people, you'll never understand. Because their darkness is bottomless. Few years later, I met a very nice lady on a rainy afternoon at the local library. Her name was Elise. She worked part-time, restoring old books and running reading programs for veterans. She smiled at me like she wasn't trying to figure me out. Just see me. It started with coffee. Then long walks. Then she asked me casually, "Have you ever been in love?" And I told her the truth. Once. But she didn't love me back the same way. She loved what she could take. And when there was nothing left, she blamed me for being empty. Elise just nodded. "Well," she said, touching my hand, "I'm not here to take. Only to give. If you've stuck with me this far, thank you. This wasn't easy to share. It wasn't heroic or glamorous. It was painful. Embarrassing. Real. I married a woman who wore her love like a mask. She said the right things. Did the right things? Until someone shinier came along and promised her the thrill I never could. And she sold me out for danger, for power, for lust. She burned the bridge and smiled while watching me drown. But I didn't. I swam through the fire. I rebuilt. And I learned that some love stories don't end with happily ever after. Some end with survival. If you made it through to the end, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more real-life inspired dramatic stories like this. The more you support, the more I can keep bringing you stories of betrayal, survival, and redemption that hit deep and stay with you. And to my loyal subscribers, you keep me going. You really do. Until next time. Stay strong. Stay sharp. And never ignore the red flags. Brian Easton. That's the endie.